This podcast is a product of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. Nothing in this podcast should be considered legal advice. If you or someone you know is looking for a qualified collaborative professional, please visit www.collaborativepracticeflorida.com and the Find Help button to locate the trained collaborative professional in your community. I'm Catherine Eaton, and I am a family law collaborative professional with the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. And today on our podcast, we have Christine Hammond, who is a mental health influencer, guest speaker, and author of her latest book is Abuse Exposed. And she has a podcast called Understanding Narcissism. So she is the perfect guest for us today to understand how a mental health facilitator, a neutral mental health facilitator, is so important and used in the collaborative process. So thank you, Christine, for joining us. And I know I just briefly touched on your accomplishments, your podcast, your book, but can you start by telling us why you got involved with collaborative and the collaborative process?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Catherine. And the big advantage I feel to collaborative is the opportunity to take two people who are going through one of the most difficult times in their lives, as in the divorce, and really help to show them that the divorce process doesn't have to be high conflict, and that it really can come down to more of a cooperative manner in which sets the platform for what I would call healthy co-parenting going forward. And while they might not have had healthiness that led prior to the divorce, like we can have healthiness on the back end of that. And I really believe strongly that the collaborative process teaches those boundaries and allows us to have a really good reset to a relationship that wasn't working one way, but now can learn how to work better post-divorce.
So that is great. That's what everybody needs.
Right.
And that's one of my favorite things about collaborative. So as your role as the neutral facilitator, what do you exactly do? How do you fit into the professional team?
That's a great question. And it's one that I frequently have to answer because a lot of times the participants don't understand what my role is. They, of course, understand what the attorney's role is, and they can really appreciate what the financial neutral's role is. But I seem like this extra wheel in the whole thing. And so one of the big benefits of having somebody like me in, especially if there needs to be a parenting plan that's done, is that I have worked with thousands of families in the past. And so I know what a good parenting plan looks like and what a bad one looks like. And I can really help to draft something that's healthy for them and that helps them to look forward in a good co-parenting manner. So one of my primary roles, especially where there's children involved, is to do the parenting plan. And that is a huge asset because it takes that element out of the collaborative process, and I work individually with them, so that we're not an entire team working on the parenting plan. So that's point A. Now, if you don't have children in the collaborative process, right, then what is my role? Or the children are already older. What is my role in that case? Well, my role is really to keep what I call everybody in their checks and balances, meaning that I help to diffuse some tension that has gone on. I pay attention to what's going on in the room. I get to know the clients very well so that I have a good idea of not only what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish post-divorce, but also what their underlying needs might be. And because I have that unique perspective of both of them, and I'm not party to one side or the other, I can bring a balance into the entire process. And sometimes I'm able to really help to facilitate some good option building as a result of that, because I'm focused on meeting the needs not of just one person, but of both people.
And how do you balance that, meeting the needs of both people, when maybe there's just very two different perspectives as to what the outcome should be.
It can be difficult, right?
I
There's
want to
no
know
doubt.
how you do it.
It absolutely can be difficult. And so I think what it comes down to is really paying attention to what the clients need and what they're really looking for. And sometimes it isn't what they say that they need, it's what they haven't said that they actually need. And that's why a mental health person is very good at that, because our entire job, our entire profession is based on that concept, that it isn't just about what somebody says, sometimes it's about what they don't say that matters. And because we're so trained in that area, we really look for those hidden things that might be like the point or the deal that actually winds up working out for the clients. So a lot of times it isn't about what's obvious or what's going on. It's about what's underneath all of it that we need to pay attention to. So how I do that, to answer, go back and answer your question, how I do it is I really look for those hidden things. I look for those areas in which, like, somebody is really looking for security, for instance. And what does security mean for them? Does it mean a financial component? Does it mean a cash component? Does it mean like having a house? Like, what does security mean for them? And then we work off of that for the one party, and then balance it with what the needs of the other party might be, because the other party's needs might not necessarily be security. They might already feel they have that in some way, but their underlying needs might be more of a support standpoint. Like, I need a sense of support, that I have like people who are going to look out for me post divorce, and that I'm going to have the support and infrastructure that I need going forward in whatever form that looks like for them. So those are just examples of what I look for that I would call hidden needs, and not the very obvious things.
In your experience, how long does the collaborative process take in general? How many sessions or how much time is needed in order to help people post divorce?
So I've been privileged to be involved in cases that last literally one session. And we have one session and we're able to get everything done. Those are very rare, so I'm going to say, like, it doesn't happen all the time, but I've been in those cases. I Most of the cases that I deal with are done anywhere between 3 to 5 sessions. I have some that go way beyond that, but that's mostly because there are other underlying issues for which are causing us to like take longer than normal. But most of the sessions are somewhere between 3 to 5 like joint meetings with everybody, team meetings.
And then if they're 3 to 5, do you, and I know you're not the financial, you're the mental health person,
Yeah.
but in general, what are the costs? Do you have any idea as to, well, even your cost or how that's handled?
Yeah, so the costs are going to vary from one professional to another. And so everybody has their own individual costs. There is something that we call like a flat fee collaborative. So I do want to mention that some of us are willing to participate in. And a flat fee collaborative is, for instance, we agree for a set dollar amount that we're going to have X number of sessions, and all of the money will be split between the professionals. And so in some cases, like, I might take less, especially if there's not a parenting plan that's involved, and the financial neutral might need more if there's like a business, for instance, that needs to be divvied out. Or if it's the opposite, where there's not a whole lot of finances and there is a parenting plan, I might take more and he or she might take less. So there are other options other than like this like open-ended kind of concept, and we call that the flat fee collaborative.
And circle back a little bit and tell me how you became involved with collaborative and how long you've been doing it, and how you found collaborative versus your traditional practice before you started with collaborative.
So before collaborative, I was doing a lot of counseling with high conflict families, and most of my families were going through straight litigation. I had a case, and I still have another one right now, 6 years in litigation for a divorce. And so the first time I experienced that with one of my families, I saw the trauma that it was leading in that family to go 6 years of having this divorce just kind of hanging over everybody's head. and I was the family therapist in that case. And so I was looking for something else. I was looking for something else that made more sense and that was more helpful to families. And that's when a friend of mine like introduced me to the concept of collaborative. And I went through and got the training and have now been a professional for approximately 4 years. And I absolutely love what I do. I love being part of it. I love the idea of collaborative and how it really does help families to try to find new ways of working together that then enables them to be healthier post-divorce.
That's a nice story. That makes sense.
Yes.
So if somebody is looking to find a mental health facilitator and they're anticipating going through the collaborative process, what are some tips in finding somebody like yourself?
So there are several of us that are available. So we have a website through FACP, and we're all listed on that website, the Mental Health Neutrals. It would be good for you to go through that list and to go onto the website to check out who the Mental Health Neutrals are and to see who is like a good fit for you. Each of us have a different skill set and we bring different things to the table from our experiences. And so I would start there. And then you can also ask for a consult. I do free 15-minute consults with people all the time talking about the collaborative process. And so I'm willing to discuss with anybody, literally, like what the process looks like, how to get started, how to find attorneys and other people that are involved in the case. And so I'm not the only mental health neutral that does that. There are several others who are also willing to do that because we believe so strongly in this process that we really want to encourage others to get in to do it.
And what area of the state are you practicing in?
I'm in the Orlando area.
So Christine, you mentioned flat fee. Can you tell us a little bit more what that looks like, how many sessions and how that works and how that's beneficial for a couple going through this process?
Yeah, I'll give an example of like doing a flat fee collaborative, which would be in standard like 3 meetings. And so in that process, we would, as professionals, agree to one set fee. And within that time period, we're going to have 3 team meetings. And during those 3 team meetings, we're getting everything accomplished and we're finalizing everything, including a parenting plan, the equitable distribution, and the marital settlement agreement. And the idea behind this is that it's a motivation for the clients to also get done within that time period because they know that if they don't complete everything within those 3 meetings, then for a certain dollar amount, we're going to have to add on a 4th meeting to the equation. And so it is a motivator for them to be cooperative, but it's also a motivator for us to be efficient and stay on time and get everything accomplished and really constantly keep the ball moving and going forward.
And when you have a full team meeting, how long does that last? What does that look like?
So the standard full team meeting is the same, even on the flat fee. So we have a half hour that we meet together as professionals. We have 2 hours that we meet with the clients, and then another half hour on the back end of it meeting as professionals. And I have found that those meetings can be very productive. We do a lot of like what I would call offline work in the flat fee collaborative, meaning that we have some conversations outside so that our team meetings are very efficient and we're getting done exactly what we need to during the team meetings.
So when you do an offline meeting, is that when you would work with the parties as to drafting the parenting plan, or does that take place during the team meeting?
That's correct. So offline in my role, I would absolutely work on taking care of the drafting of the parenting plan, making sure that that's done and finished. So then that way, when we come together, we're just focusing on the equitable distribution aspect of it.
And if parties are doing a flat fee and there's 3 meetings, how are they spaced apart? Is it once a week, 3 days in a row? What do you traditionally see?
So I have found that the best one is like 1 month apart. And the reason why we need a month is sometimes it takes a little bit of time. For instance, like if additional financials need to be obtained, if some more information needs to be done, an appraisal needs to be done on a house, like we need a little bit of time in between then so that we can get some of those things accomplished. So I like a month apart between them, and usually we schedule them at the very beginning. So if we're doing a flat fee, we're going to schedule, for instance, one in September, one in October, one in November, and everybody's going to know those 3 dates up front from the very beginning.
And thank you for explaining. And I've got a little side question for you as far as parenting plan goes. Some parts of the state are very they go into drafting a parenting plan and they've been told, hey, it's 50-50 time sharing. So they get stuck in that I'm getting my 50% of the time sharing with my kids, and that's my right. How do you, I mean, sometimes 50-50 works, sometimes it doesn't, but how do you address this concept that it used to be like when I was growing up, it was every other weekend and dinner with my dad on Wednesdays. So
Right.
it's changed a lot from there. So and it went from that to, which wasn't much time, to now half the time. So when you're working with parents on a parenting plan, and this concept, everyone's Googled it, that it's good, it's gonna be 50-50. How do you address that?
So that's one of the best things about collaborative is that we can really come to an agreement that's in the best needs of this family and what their family's needs are. And I'll give you an example. So I have a family that I was working with, and we were working on the drafting of the parenting plan, and one of the parties travels for a living. And so because they travel for a living, we needed to come up with a parenting plan that made sense. And although for financial reasons, we wound up working the money out to be 50-50, that wasn't exactly what the timeshare wound up being. It wound up being more like 60-40, with the parent that didn't travel having 60% and the parent that did having 40%. But everybody was okay with that. And that's the great part about the collaborative process, is that we can really tailor the parenting plan to meet the family's individual needs. And it wasn't like a regular schedule that you would think of, because the traveling happened consistently, like at the beginning of every month. And so then it was like the 40% was heavily weighed towards the end of the month. So I'm just throwing that out as an example of like how creative you can be in the process of collaborative. That's very difficult to do that through litigation.
Thank you for sharing. Are there any other issues? I mean, when people say parenting plan, the first thing that jumps to my mind, even as the attorney, is the time sharing. So what are some of the other issues and concerns that need to be addressed in the parenting plan? I mean, we can all look at the form, the Supreme Court form, and see this is the minimum, but really, what are the big meaty issues other than time sharing that you help parents address?
So one of the things that COVID taught me was that we really need to address things like vaccines, for instance, something that I had never thought of before. And that has become a very hot topic issue. And so I make sure that the parents are on the same page of that. And if they're not, we try to come up with a plan of like, whose recommendation are we going to follow? Is, for instance, we're going to follow the mother's recommendation on medical issues and the father's recommendation on educational issues. And we can kind of divide that up in the parenting plan. So where there's a disagreement, for instance, maybe the mother gets to make the final decision in medical and the father gets to make the final decision in education. And so there are ways of like equally dividing things between the parents, but also giving them like the ability to make choices that are great and in the best interest of their families. Another one of the big issues that I come across are holidays. And so, for instance, I had a family in which the father was Muslim and the mother was Catholic. And so we made sure that he had all of the Muslim holidays and we made sure that she had all of the Christian holidays. And so we were able to divide that out for this family so that they were able to have a good parenting plan that made sense and that was in tune with what they needed.
Have you come up with issues between parents regarding extracurricular activities? I know football, it
Yes.
seems to be a hot one in that, I mean, some families are very football. We've always played football, and now with, concussion syndrome and things like that, it's become a topic. Have you found that to be in your case, in any of your cases?
Yes, absolutely. And so we usually talk about extracurricular activities and and even put in the parenting plan. If, for instance, like the families are not okay with the child ever playing football, we'll put that in there just as like a reminder because the parenting plan is their default document. And that's the default document that's going to go forward. And the parenting plan isn't for the courts, it's for the families. So that if there's a question going forward, like this is what we agreed to when we got a divorce. Now, understanding that the needs of the family might change post divorce, like if you make a parenting plan and a child's 3 years old, it's not going to be good when they're 13, right? And so the needs of the family might change. But the nice part about a good or well written parenting plan is it's already taken into account. So, for instance, like I've done time sharing arrangements that are like a 2-2-3 when the child is little, and then switching when the child becomes in middle school and high school to week on and week off, because that makes more sense given sports and activities and extracurriculars that they're going to have. And so that's already built into the parenting plan so that it becomes like this document that they can carry with them going forward.
That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
This podcast is a product of the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals. Nothing in this podcast should be considered legal advice. If you or someone you know is looking for a qualified collaborative professional, please visit www.collaborativepracticeflorida.com and the Find Help button to locate the trained collaborative professional in your community.